Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, over the past few days on the show, following the publication of the 1926 census, we've been exploring family connections and uncovering the lives of our ancestors from generations past. Now, today we continue on that journey, and we've got some very interesting stories on the way, and I'm glad to be joined in the studio by Pat Boyce, by James Toomey, and by a great friend to the show over many years. Tom Hennessy is with us as well, and good morning to you all, and thanks for coming into us. Tom, can I go to you first of all on this? For many people, I suppose, that are dipping their toe in the water of their family history because of the publication of the census, but it's always been important to you, hasn't it? That genealogy and that family history.
I suppose it's important for a sense of belonging wherever you're from or wherever you live. And I suppose we're lucky here in Tipperary that we're steeped in history. So I'd have heard my first stories from, I suppose, my mother and then my grandfather when I visited him there at Cashel. And they're you were talking about characters there earlier on, but it's all linked in, like, you know. And the two men that are here in the studio, like they've handed down accounts, and there's also documentation to back up the stories. But I suppose we had a historian down, Bernadette Cunningham, for the Geoffrey Keaton commemoration there last year, and we were talking about Shatteron Keaton hiding in the Glen of Aherlow. And she said to me after, how do you know that happened? And I said, it's folklore, it's handed down. But if you ask anyone from Aherlow, they'll have the same, they've heard the same story.
So it's oral history, yeah.
So that, okay, sometimes you can back things up. And I suppose with the Tan War and the Civil War, we've a lot of resources now that have come online and stuff. So, but you still can't beat the oral handed down history, because some of those stories, a lot of those people didn't talk, the older generation, especially that were involved. And after the Civil War, I suppose it was quite bitter in places, Yeah. So you're basically, the more, I'd always encourage people, go out there and just write down the stories. The mobile phones are great now. You can record and just start with your own family history and your own locality. And I've been lucky now the last number of years, and I've got great interviews from the likes of Pat here beside me, and historians like PJ Maxwell there in Clonoulty have discovered some of my own history I didn't even know about, and I put up there my TikTok channel, Tipperary Fenian, on YouTube. But it's important, Fran, because, as I say, as a nation, as a people, if you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going. And I would say that a lot of, especially the Republican history, has been kind of covered up. A lot of schools don't even teach much about it. They might do a little bit of 1916, but that's about it. So that's why it's so important, Fran.
Pat Boyce is with us from Aherlow, as you said. And Pat, what strikes me as well is that a lot of the involvement of women historically over the years was sort of, pushed into the background. Will you tell me about your granddads?
My grandmother was one, that was Marion McDonough, and my grandaunt was Judah. They were sisters of Paddy McDonough, Vice Commandant Paddy McDonough, who was shot with Dinny Lacey in 23 in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Paddy McDonough is actually bleed to death by the Free Staters inside the barracks in Tipperary. And so they were Republicans all their lives. Judah, I went over to live with her when I was 6 years of age, and she looked after me then. I looked after her when she got old. Excuse me. She lived to be 103.
Did she indeed?
Yeah, great Republican, always.
Coming them on, of course.
Coming them on, yeah. And both of them were in jail. They were in jail they were arrested with Dan Breen and their great friend Tim Donovan. And they were in Limerick first and then in Kilmainham. And as I said, they were great Republicans.
Yeah. And was she free in terms of telling stories around that time, or was she careful about talking about those times?
No, she told us exactly what happened. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly with her own brother, Paddy McDonough, who was shot. And Jerry Kiley was shot outside their house.
Yeah.
And he was shot dead by the Free Staters, and there was a Free State officer shot as well outside their door. So
and how was she about that, Pat? I mean, was she bitter? Was she...
Well, like another great woman up in Glenelg, Mrs. O'Keefe, they refused to take pensions. They never took pensions when they were offered.
On principle?
On principle, absolutely. And there was another woman up in North Tipperary, O'Brien was her name, who didn't take them. And I'm sure there were more, but they're the only ones I know of. So, as I said, she was a Republican to the very end.
Yeah. Can I just intercede there? Of
course.
The story where there was a band playing. Just tell that, Pat.
That's a very good one. John Hassett was involved with the 3rd Tipperary Old IRA Brigade, and there was a commemoration in St. Michael's Cemetery, and the Irish Army were marching up. And Jula said to him, "Excuse me, Mr. Hassett, who are they?" Oh, he said, they're the Irish Army, he said to her. She said, "They're wearing the very same uniforms as the crowd that shot my brother."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a great... When did she pass away? How long?
2000.
In 2000, wow.
Yeah.
So she would have seen enormous changes.
Everything, yeah. And at her funeral, to the very bitter end, the graveyard was surrounded by special branchmen, armed.
Go on.
Yeah.
Even in the year 2000?
Even in the year 2000, absolutely.
Isn't that incredible? What did she make then of the way politics developed in this country, considering her background? Yeah. What were her thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest with you, there was nobody else to vote for that time, only Fianna Fáil, so she would have voted for Fianna Fáil.
Would she?
She would, yeah, even though she didn't like David Era. But she would have voted for him.
Yeah.
She would. There was nobody else to vote. But another interesting one, my grandmother, Marion, at that time, a great day out for the family was to go over to Kilcorn Lodge.
Yeah.
And she was there with my father and my mother, who was her daughter, and who came in to have a meal. There was General Richard Mulcahy.
Wow.
Former Free State man who was responsible for the Ballyseedy bombing in Kerry, and she got up and walked out. She couldn't stay in the same room as him.
My God. Now, for listeners who wouldn't be aware of that Ballyseedy incident, do you want to just elaborate? That was a horrific...
That was where Republicans were tied to a landmine. Prisoners taken out and tied to a landmine by Free Staters and blown to smithereens.
The only reason that story was told was because a man called Fuller survived it.
That's it, exactly.
And hid, and he was able to tell the true story, how they were chained to the landmine. And
that's it, yeah.
Yes, one of the great atrocities, wasn't it, indeed?
Absolutely.
I'll come back to you in a sec, Pat, but James Toomey from Tipperary Town. Your grandfather, James.
Yeah, my grandfather Thomas, he, well, I know he was born on the 30th of March 1887, and his own mother died when he was just 7 months old. So he had a hard upbringing, you know. His own father was a farm labourer, and his own father was arrested for rioting against the RIC at the time. So, as I say, he didn't lick it up from the road. So, he ended up in Mountjoy, and he went on. He was one of the men known as the Mountjoy heroes in the famous hunger strike. Yeah.
And did you know him? Did you?
Oh, no, I didn't know him. I just, you know, because my own father was involved years later and just picked up stories from him, you know.
Yeah. He carried Sean Tracy's coffin.
Yeah, he was under Sean Tracy's coffin at one stage during the funeral, yeah.
Yeah. Now, his sisters as well were involved in the struggle,
his two daughters.
Oh, was it daughters?
Two daughters were in coming on, my Aunt Peggy and my Aunt Chrissy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did they have stories as well, did they?
Well... Yeah, well, I know they were arrested on numerous occasions, but they were arrested by the Free State, you know, and just, you know, they served time for that.
Yeah.
You know.
He had a full Republican funeral, did he?
Oh, my grandfather had a full Republican funeral, yeah. Yeah.
And how important is this to you, James?
It's very important because I grew up in a Republican family, you know. My own father was interned in the 30s and 40s.
Was he indeed?
Yeah, and... and he was very involved up to the time he died, you know what I mean? So, but you just pick up bits and pieces here and there, and you know.
Yeah. But has it influenced you?
Oh, of course, yeah. I'd like to think I'm a Republican, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what do you make nowadays? I mean, you hear people claiming to be Republicans now, but you know,
there's a lot of people claiming to be Republicans, friend. You know what I mean?
I would doubt some of the credentials, but let's leave that at that. Yeah. But what do you make of it now when describing yourself as a Republican in 2026?
Well, I'd say. Well, I describe myself as a Republican. Like I just think a lot of people left their Republican beliefs behind them and went a different road.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I didn't change my beliefs, that I stayed on the same path the whole time.
Yeah. Interesting. Tom, tell me about some of your own people. Your grandmother.
Yeah, look, as I say, she was, I suppose, like a lot of Tipperary people, she played her part. Wouldn't have been as, like, the two lads here beside me, their history is unbelievable. I suppose I'm proud, I suppose, on both sides of me, I had safe houses and women that ran them. Just a story there, there's a book written by a man called Patrick Cranley. It's called Just Standing Idly By. And I only came across the book a few years ago, but he tells a story of being with his father, and they were going to bring a message. It was during the Civil War, and to bring a message to Ryan's of the Racecourse, which was my grandfather's people. Just, you know where that is, Fran, just near Rockville there.
Yes.
And De Valera was at Ryan's, and it was during the Civil War. He was on the run, but they got stopped by the IRA in Golden, and they were let through because they obviously had the message and they had whatever the password to get through. And now the Free State Army at this stage would have been in Cashel, so it was quite close proximity. This is what you're dealing with in those days. So they reached Ryan's, and he describes in the book that a tall man dressed as a priest with a beard and full priestry out walking up the yard. And the minute they came closer, Mick Ryan, who was my great grand uncle, said hello to Patrick's father, but straight away Patrick Cranley describes in the book how his dad straight away says, "Well, Dev," and that how Mick Ryan was taken aback because they thought that Dev so well disguised as a priest. So, yeah, little stories like that. Fascinating. It's lovely to see it written down, because I knew little pieces. I knew that when Dev was sentenced to be shot, he wrote 3 letters, and one of them was to my great-grand-uncle. How they got to know each other first, I would say, is that he was teaching in Rockville with Thomas McDonough. Yeah. And I know also that we had a few letters, but the house got cleaned out. But an important letter that was written from Kilmainham was actually stolen out of the Ryan house in the 60s, and it's never been found. Now there is a copy of that in one of the museums in Dublin. But they became good friends. When he became president, he was called. Now, my grandmother was from Fethard, and she was Ryan as well. She was Mary Bucky Ryan, and her family. Her brother was arrested in 23 during the Civil War, and she told my aunt a few little bits and pieces, but the beating he got seemingly in Clonmel Barracks from the Free State, was way worse than what the treatment they got from the Black and Tans, which I always think of it like it was nearly a more bitter war, and she often spoke how he was dragged out of Watergate Street there and brought in, and it was a horrendous beating he got. But when she was 16, Fran, she used to bring messages from Fethard, and she described to my aunt, who told me, and I was written down, it's great to get the little stories, how she used to go without a saddle, bareback, through the fields to Graig. She was 16 years of age, and she'd deliver her little dispatch, which would go onto a nail in a shed, and that was her little part.
Isn't it incredible? And Pat, did you ever think about the calibre of these people that we're talking about right now? I mean, their bravery.
Absolutely, bravest people. Judah and Marion had another brother called Jimmy, who had to go to America because he was one of the stewards at Sean Tracy's funeral, and a couple of days, I think it was the day after, the Dwyer brothers were shot by the Black and Tans for doing the same, for being stewarding at Sean Tracy's funeral. And they came to the house for Jimmy, but they hid him under the bed or something.
Oh my God.
And she had to bring him the day after to America, and they never saw him again.
My God, is that the man who went on to work in the prison service in the States?
Yes, that's him. Yeah,
and had a great career.
Great career there. Yeah, we met his sons and daughters after they came home. They were home last year even.
Yeah,
but
it's fascinating. And James,
they were no doubt about. Sorry, they were very brave, bravery unbelievable for young, and how young they were at the time.
Women and men.
Women and men. Yeah. So young.
And what was that? Just the circumstances they found themselves in? Do you think, Pat, or were they just special people?
They were special people.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I'd say without doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
James, what about that? Because nowadays I can't imagine people having the passion and the bravery and stuff to do what these people do.
They were very committed people, and they believed in what they believed in, and you know, and they were just so committed, you know. And they thought what was right, and they wouldn't sway from it.
And that passion and that commitment to Ireland and the republicanism, is that kind of largely gone now, do you think, is it?
It's gone, but I'd like to think that it's not gone completely, that people are beginning to see things for what they are now, you know, and that it's making a comeback a bit, you know.
Do you think so? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that, Tom?
I definitely like we had a protest march there in Lismore over the weekend on Sunday, and we had a fine crowd, and I think people are waking up with all that went on there with the fuel protests and everything. Fran, I think Irish people, there's a lot of people not happy with the direction the country has gone. You know, personally, I think we're maybe listening to Europe too much, and I don't think our leaders. I think the middle, the squeeze middle, as they're called. I'd put myself in there now. The people that are trying their best to rear families and whatever. I think they're working hard, but you know, we're taxed fairly high compared to a lot of European countries. And I don't think that there seems to be an interest in the ordinary Irish people. Like what's going on there now with the farmers in Lismore is a scandal, Fran. You probably know, you've read about it.
Yeah, just to remind people, but this is a British ownership.
So it's owned by Devonshire. He's 8,000 acres he owns claiming to own of our mountainside there, which is another. You know, we talk about the treaty and the Civil War, but a lot of these big landlords that, to be straight about, that basically robbed the land, they were left in place, which I don't understand. And he's claiming 8,000 acres. He's also claiming the full rights to the River Blackwater, the whole way down into Youghal Harbour. But he decided there, encouraged by, he had some local advisors helping him here. I don't know whose idea it was, whether it was his or these local advisors, but they have decided to put up the rent on the small sheep farmers by 900%, Fran. Yeah. So there's a serious protest movement. It's gathering pace. We had a nice crowd on Sunday, and I suppose we need to send a message that it's not acceptable.
But there's still shades of the occupation alive and well, is there?
Yeah, it's actually, it is, Fran. And I suppose, look, you know, the lads here, we're all involved in commemorations and Republican commemorations, and I suppose it's like in the 6 counties at the moment, you know, we still have an army occupying them there, a foreign army, and being a Republican today and going to commemoration in the 6 counties isn't easy, like, you know. Now, we also had a British commander there speaking in Antrim, saying that the biggest threat to Ireland was Russia, like. I never heard such, crap, to be straight about it. Look, we deserve to have the rights to everything, you know, from the sea to the centre of Ireland should be owned by the Irish people.
And Pat, can I ask you, you know, Julia, Marion and their brother, as you were talking about as well, what would they think of the Ireland of 2026, do you think?
Oh, I would say that they think what I think of it, I'd say.
Which is what, Pat?
Well, regarding the settlement and the Good Friday Agreement, and I know it brought peace to a certain degree, but I'd say they would view it as a sellout of Republican principles, yeah. Men didn't fight and die for a return to Stormont. Even coming forward after the hunger strikers didn't die for Stormont.
Yeah. But lives are saved, Pat. I suppose that's the compromise, is that it?
Well, if compromise, yeah.
Yeah.
But on a point of principle, there can be no compromise. It'd be my point of view.
Right.
We can't speak for the dead, but I'm only thinking I'd imagined it. That's the way they would think.
And James, what about your grandfather and the other relations you spoke about? What would they think of Ireland of 2026? Do you think?
I know my grandfather.
Just come a little closer to that.
I know my grandfather when he was released. And in the Civil War, I know what side he took in the Civil War, and I know my own father then was interned by the Free State, and up to the time he died, my father never agreed with the direction Sinn Féin went. So I'd be the same beliefs to that.
So that says it all, as far as
that says it all, yeah.
I suppose, Fran, the document that I keep referring back to is the 1916 proclamation, and that's the blueprint. And even if you read down through that, a lot of the problems we have in Ireland today could be solved if we went by that.
If we adhered to that.
Yeah, and I think the recent fuel protests as well, while certain people, some of the media, of course, RT, News Talk, in fairness to yourself, Fran, you do listen to the ordinary people on the ground, Tipp FM. I've always found you good, you'll interview us, but I do think that the narrative was out there that somehow there was crazy stuff about far-right protests. And like, if you went to Care there, Fran, and you saw the ordinary decent people, farmers, hauliers, small businesses, and I'll tell you, it turned into a bit of a festival there at that. The Saturday and Sunday we had a chip fan, the Galty catering people there, and we had, I can't think of the coffee people, but it's all on my TikTok. There was like Mehel is the word. It was an Irish, Irish coming together, the community, and I think it was a special few days. And I've said it, that man of the Duffys, John Dallion and James Gagg, and I think they've done Ireland a good service even by what they've done as regards leading these fuel protests. And of course, Fran, the fuel was the final straw that broke the camel's back, and we've had a lot of issues here in Ireland in the last 10 or 15 years,
Keep those thoughts in mind, because I need to take a break, and we'll be right back in just a few moments.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tipptoday@tippfm.com.
And you're very welcome back. And Pat Boyce is still with us, James Toomey and Tom Hennessy. Tom, before we go back to the lads, what we're doing here now and what you're doing all of the time, is it important? Is it important that we talk and that we remember and we reminisce?
Yeah, 100%, Fran. And it's important that the narrative, the story, the truth is told, not something maybe that
sanitized in some
way. And it, like, for me, what was it, the biggest disgrace I've seen in the last 10 years as regards history was when they decided, I think Josephine Gale minister decided to commemorate the Black and Tans, and that's completely rewriting history. I don't agree with some political parties attending British monarchs' funerals or going to their memorials. You don't see that in any other country in Europe. Like, it's akin to the French going to honour some German lad that was invading their country. Like, so that's complete revisionism of the worst kind. But I do.
They would tell you though that we're moving on and that this kind of diplomacy is important now.
Yeah, I even heard someone say on Tipp FM about the King of England attending or being invited again to Ireland or visiting Ireland.
His intention is to come here again.
Yeah, and like I was totally opposed to that when he was invited to the likes of Cahir Town and Cashel. The worry I have about all that is that, first of all, their army is still in 6 of our counties. It's sending out the wrong message to have, even to had school children singing for them and all that. Listen, if we had our 32 county republic as per the 1916 proclamation, I'd be the first to say welcome whoever into Ireland. But it's unfinished business there, and you can't have this narrative. It's not a normal situation to have foreign countries still.
And still the majority of people, Tom, as you know, welcomed him. And
I wouldn't say the majority now.
People out on the streets,
I know
they were
that
waving and they wanted to shake hands.
Yeah, but you'll always have the few that don't know their history. They might. In fact, the weekend before that, we unveiled our Sean Hogan monument, and we invited a couple of councillors. We had one councillor arrived on, but the following weekend for Charles, King of England, they were all in there. And in fact, some of them, even after meeting him in Cahir, they raced up to Cashel to meet him again. The gas
getting cynical on me now.
But the gas thing about, Fran, is that these are the same family that Sean Hogan was being brought to Cork to be hung by these people's army. Like, try make that make sense.
Pat, there is a good chance that, within our lifetime that we will see a united Ireland. But does it bother you that we're talking about this idea of a new Ireland in some way? Does that concern you?
No, that I could put up with that. I could live with that if we have a united Ireland. But I can't see the united Ireland. I can't see how it's going to come about unless the Britain decide to put out. There is going to be no border, Paul. It's only pie in the sky by Sinn Féin.
Do you think that?
Not at all.
Yeah.
And even the Good Friday Agreement is signed up to anyone who wants to read it. Britain will be deciding.
Right, but the population is changing in the north, so there's a good chance there will be a border poll.
There's a chance you may have the majority, but that doesn't mean you'd have a border. No, well, that's only my view. I don't think there will be any border.
And are you concerned at all about any concessions that would have to be made?
Sure, already they're talking about we do away with our
the flag
and the national anthem. You know.
And would you be prepared for that?
Not at all.
No, you wouldn't.
Jesus, I would not.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly not. Just one other thing I meant to say earlier. We were talking about Julia McDonough. In 1916, there was 2 policemen shot down in Manour by Michael O'Callaghan.
Yeah.
And that day, who was a young policeman was stationed in Lisfernane, and he called down to Julia. They had a small shop, and he told them they were going down to arrest Michael O'Callaghan, and she begged him not to go.
My God.
No, she begged him not to go, and he went down, and he's buried in Clonbeg.
That's incredible. And
she begged him not to go.
James, can I put that question to you as well? That idea of a new Ireland, a united Ireland, but they're describing it as a new Ireland. Are you concerned about the concessions that might have to be made?
All I can say, Frank, is that if you go into any building, and I presume here the proclamation will be up on the wall, you'd never see the Good Friday Agreement up on the wall for this famous document.
Mm.
You have the one that was signed by 6 people. Mm. And this one that was signed, there's supposed to be this amazing document. Where is it?
Well, you see, what I guess people will be shouting at the radio, at least the killing stopped, the devastation for families and all of that stopped. And for an agreement like that, you have to make concessions. So.
You have to make concessions, but do you leave one side in the wilderness to pacify another side? So I don't think so. That would be my take, and anyway, I just don't know. Friend. So that peace is lovely, but at what cost?
Yeah, at what price? Tom, before we wrap up, you wanted to mention a couple of things that are happening.
Yeah, so another great woman who sheltered the boys after the Salahead Beg ambush, the start of the Tan War, Marion Tobin, buried in Ballylouby in my own parish. We're with fundraiser running to erect a plaque to her in Ballylouby. So it's on my Facebook page. I'll put it up there again, and there's a GoFund for that. I also want to mention raffle that's running. Sean Callan, another member of the Independent Tipperary Republican group, he's based here in Clonmel. Sean, you know Sean, he's a good man. Sean is running a raffle, and the prize is a slate, and it's Father Patrick Rhines that died last year, special commemorative clock, and funds will go towards a commemoration that's been held on the 14th of June at 1 p.m. in Rossmore. We'll have a poster ready for that shortly. And myself then, we've our 5th Sean Hogan commemoration, and we'll have a great speaker. I'll be announcing that during the week, and that'll be towards the end of August. And of course then we've Bodenstown coming up. Last year was a huge day. The 7th of June in Bodenstown, Independent Republicans from all over Ireland will attend that. So, Fran, basically, I think at the moment there's a big, especially with young people, they want to know their history. The tricolours are flying proudly.
Singing the ballads, aren't they?
Yeah, I've spoken about, there's been a good few attacks on people flying the tricolour from certain MEPs. Be very proud of our tricolour. There's a lot of young men lying in graveyards today that fought under that flag and fought for the freedom of our country. So, as I said, the history is no way dead in the water. In fact, with TikTok and YouTube and the likes of yourself bringing on the boys here, it's very popular now among the young people, and that's where the future is. It's going to be the young people that hopefully we'll have a new type of politics. And as I say, I've great respect for the fuel protest leaders there, and they've awakened the country, and hopefully we'll.
All right, well, it's great to see you all, and thanks very much indeed for coming in to us today. Most interesting conversation. Tom Hennessy, James Toomey and Pat Boyce. Thank you for that. News and information's coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.